Hello, I'm Marites Vitug, and this is Worldview. We take a look at global, regional, and national affairs in conversations with officials, newsmakers, and analysts. Joining us is New Zealand's ambassador to the Philippines, Catherine McIntosh. We will be talking about security relations between our countries, as well as other facets of this almost 60-year-old relationship. Welcome to the show, Ambassador. Thank you for making time.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here.
Yeah, and you can also speak in Filipino if you like.
Salamat po.
Okay, so let's start with the visit of Prime Minister Locson to Manila last year. The first time in 14 years that a New Zealand Prime Minister visited the country. Then he and President Marcos, appeared to hit it off well. And then soon after, your Foreign Affairs Minister Peters came to Manila. So we've not seen this level of interest of New Zealand on the Philippines. So is there a change in foreign policy? Is there a reset? So what are the factors that led to this?
Well, let's start with the bigger picture.
Okay.
If we look at the world, there's a level of disruption and change and challenges that we haven't seen in decades, whether it be climate change, geopolitical developments, or technological change. And so it's against that backdrop that New Zealand has reset our foreign policy in order to be responsive to a changing environment. And as part of that reset, New Zealand has realized that Southeast Asia is critical to New Zealand's prosperity and security. So we've been re-energizing our relations with key Southeast Asian partners, and we're really pleased to be celebrating 50 years of relations with ASEAN this year. But of course, the Philippines is a big part of this refocus. So we had the visit of Prime Minister Locson to Manila in April, followed swiftly by the visit of our Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Winston Peters. And this quick succession of visits is proof that New Zealand is re-energizing its relationships with the Philippines. And there was a great meeting of minds between Prime Minister Locson and President Marcos Jr., to the point where they released a joint statement which emphasizes a fantastic decision to elevate our bilateral relationship by 2026 to a comprehensive partnership. And actually, there's another aspect. We're so fortunate to have a Prime Minister who knows the Philippines well. When he was here, he said, "This is my first visit here as Prime Minister of New Zealand, but it's my 25th visit as Christopher Locson." And actually, this is something that the President remarked to me when I called on him in my presentation of credentials. And he was telling me that when he first met our Prime Minister, he didn't feel like he was speaking to the Prime Minister of New Zealand necessarily, but rather to a Filipino businessman, such as the knowledge of our Prime Minister of the Philippines.
So I didn't know that this was his 25th visit. No, I mean, when he was in the private sector, he visited the Philippines 25 times.
That's right, with his family and in his former career in business.
Oh, fascinating. That's why he knows Jollibee.
Yes, and also he was accompanied by our first Filipino member of Parliament, Paulo Garcia, and he's a strong supporter of Jollibee. And so they visited there together during the official visit, and that photo went viral on social media.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So you mentioned earlier that the Philippines and New Zealand will celebrate 60 years of diplomatic relations in 2026, I think. And then you said that there will be a comprehensive partnership by that time. So what does this mean for both of our countries? What does it mean to be a comprehensive partner of New Zealand?
Well, the status or level of comprehensive partnership clearly communicates the willingness, the desire to do more together and to make our relationship stronger. It's evidence of the value that New Zealand places on the Philippines, but it's much more than that, because it's actually the shared commitment of New Zealand and the Philippines, led from the top, decided by leaders, to invest more in this relationship. And it's also a call to drive progress across 4 key areas: political relationships, trade and climate, defence and security, and our people connections.
So, talking about defense and security, last year, 2024 was the first time the New Zealand Embassy here in Manila put out a statement calling out Beijing for its aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea. So, maybe this relates to your earlier answer that the world has changed and that Southeast Asia is now important to New Zealand. But are there any specific factors that made you decide to call out Beijing last year for the first time?
Well, part of it comes down to New Zealand's identity, our identity as a small and trading nation. So as a small country, we rely on international rules to level the playing field. And as an economy that is dependent on exports, we need safe navigation and access to air and shipping routes. So New Zealand, like the Philippines, is committed to an international rules-based system, including UNCLOS, the Constitution of the Oceans. And so we recognize that UNCLOS is fundamental in upholding in our region safety, security, navigation, and access. And so when there have been dangerous on the water incidents in the South China Sea, New Zealand has consistently and will continue to express our deep concerns. And we consistently call for a de-escalation of tensions. So given our serious concerns about certain developments in the South China Sea and the risk that it poses to regional security as well as our national interests and trade, New Zealand thinks it's appropriate to publicly make statements on this matter.
And also, both of our countries are island nations.
Very much.
So we share that in common. And then also last year, so many things happened. So last year, New Zealand and the Philippines signed a mutual logistics supporting arrangement, an MLSA. I think you also wrote that in your piece for the Philippine Star. So what does this mean for both our countries? How do we benefit from such an arrangement, rather?
Well, New Zealand has a long-standing partnership with the Philippines in defence. If we go back to 2012, that's when we signed a defence cooperation arrangement, and it was updated in 2017. Then, as you say, last year, we signed, when the Deputy Prime Minister was here, the Mutual Logistics Supporting Arrangement, which helps with, as it's titled, logistics, to remove logistical barriers so we can conduct activities together more easily. And on top of that, there is the prospect of a status of visiting forces agreement. So combined, this represents a step change in our military relationship, and it will allow us to do more together in terms of military cooperation.
So this means joint exercises apart from maybe multilateral with other countries as well?
Well, it does provide the opportunity for activities to be conducted by New Zealand and the Philippines and vice versa. Yeah.
Okay. So, in connection to what you said, also last year, New Zealand joined the Philippines, US, Australia, and Japan through the West Philippine Sea in a maritime cooperative activity. Again, it was the first time for New Zealand to join. So I understand that this comes from the perspective of Southeast Asia now becoming an important partner of New Zealand. And does New Zealand really want to stress maritime cooperation?
Yes, we really valued cooperating in that multilateral maritime cooperation activity last year in September, and open to future participation, depending on timing and resources. But there's also a maritime dialogue that we are looking forward to launch. So there were many great things agreed between Prime Minister Luxon and President Marcos Jr. when he was here in Manila, and to launch a maritime dialogue was one of those.
So the target for the first maritime dialogue will be 2025? Will be this year, or?
Yes, we're hoping to hold an inaugural maritime dialogue this year. And, you know, there's so much in common, as you referred to earlier. We're both island nations. And in fact, for New Zealand, our maritime domain takes up 1/12 of the world's surface area. And we have the 4th largest exclusive economic zone in the world. So there's lots that we can share with the Philippines, and we look forward to the Philippines insights as well.
I wonder what size is the Philippines exclusive economic zone, but that's for us to find out. That's fascinating. And of course, you mentioned earlier about the status of visiting forces agreement, and that it was announced, I think, by the Philippine government as well, that the negotiations will start or have started already.
Yes, they have started. I mean, there's real political commitment to conclude a visiting forces agreement. It was something that our Prime Minister raised with President Marcos Jr. when he was here in April, and then the conversation continued by our Deputy Prime Minister with counterparts here in the Philippines. And most recently, just last week, Philippine Defense Secretary Teodoro said that he hopes that the negotiations can conclude within this first semester of the year. And I was personally really delighted, actually last month, to participate in the first negotiating round.
Oh, you mean this is between, representing the Philippines is the Defense Department?
That's right. It's led by the Defense Department, and then there is also justice officials and foreign affairs on the Philippines side.
Okay. And you said that maybe within the first semester of this year, as Secretary Teodoro announced. So that's quite quick. I mean, just as quick as the agreement we had with Japan. Japan was about 8 months, so yours is about 6 months. Yeah. So, wow.
Well, in the first round was really positive and constructive. So, yes, we look forward to continued hard work and good cooperation in these negotiations.
Yes. Earlier, you mentioned, Ambassador, a defense cooperation agreement in 2017, but which was renewed, I understand? Or
so it dates back to 2012, and it was updated in 2017.
Yeah. So did this involve mainly training of Filipino soldiers in New Zealand? So what were the highlights of this defense cooperation agreement?
Yeah, a key area of that arrangement is the ongoing military training, exchange, and education in New Zealand. And actually, when I go to functions, I often meet people from the Philippine Defence Forces who say they've really benefited from their training in New Zealand.
Oh, is this just training, or do they undergo like courses, formal courses in your universities?
There's a range of options. One I hear a lot about is people going to our military base called Waiouru, which is in a rather a cold part of New Zealand. So I think it's a little bit of a shock to the system.
And it's usually Navy, because we're maritime, both are maritime, or it includes Navy,
well,
Army?
Waiouru is an Army base.
Oh, okay. So now that's going to be in our consciousness after talking to you. And then, as you said earlier, the maritime dialogue, inaugural maritime dialogue, will take place this year. What do you think are the key issues? What things do we have in common, or what can we learn from New Zealand in terms of managing our maritime affairs?
We're currently in the process of scoping the inaugural dialogue so that it can really have impact, and we can hone in on the areas which will be mutually beneficial. But you could imagine there could be a range of areas discussed, from maritime security to perhaps environmental matters as well. And certainly in New Zealand's recent maritime strategy, or maritime security strategy, it is broad in its focus. And one of the recent things we emphasize is a concept called kaitiakatanga in our Māori native language, which means guardianship, and how important it is to be guardians of our marine environment.
So let's go back. Let's go to another subject. I think New Zealand is very active in the Philippines in terms of development programs. So I understand that this include programs in agriculture, indigenous peoples, and biodiversity. Maybe Ambassador, you can walk us through some of your programs here in the Philippines. And I understand you were in Mindanao recently. So
Indeed.
did you feel safe there?
Yes, I did. Thank you. So New Zealand's International Development Program in the Philippines dates back to the 1970s. And in the last 3 years, we've provided 1 billion pesos in support to the Philippines. And we have 3 focus areas for our program. The first is climate and economic resilience. The second is knowledge and skills, particularly through our Manaki New Zealand Scholarship Program. And the third is in the area of peace and security. And perhaps I could share a couple of examples.
Yes, please.
So our new flagship development program is called iLead, and it's about empowering Indigenous women and girls. So we'll be connecting Indigenous women from Mindanao with Māori people in New Zealand to share knowledge on governance of ancestral domains. And another project I visited recently is on climate smart agriculture. And I went to Los Baños, to the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and was delighted to see the research that scientists are doing there. And it's around reducing agricultural greenhouse gas emissions from the cow by changing the feed of the cow. So I got a great selfie with a cow. I felt very much at home, given we have so many cows in New Zealand. And I had a great conversation also with the director of the Dairy Training and Research Institute, who commented that he's getting a lot of Filipinos who are being accredited and trained through his program and then going on to New Zealand to serve and work on our dairy farms, gaining that experience and coming back to the Philippines with that experience.
Oh, that's fascinating. And also you have a program on biodiversity. Is there a specific area here in the Philippines?
Yes, when the Deputy Prime Minister was here, he announced a contribution actually coinciding with the 50th anniversary of ASEAN relations to the ASEAN Centre for Biodiversity. So we're doing some great work with them. Yeah, around, it's called a flyway for migratory birds. There are birds that migrate via the Philippines to New Zealand, and it's good to bring in local communities to support that biodiversity effort.
Yes, you just mentioned the 50th year of the New Zealand-ASEAN relations. So what to you is maybe the biggest accomplishment or the main significance of this anniversary?
Well, if I look back and I had to choose one,
okay,
I think that New Zealand's contribution to economic integration is a standout. We are really big on open and free trade, and so we were an active partner in the negotiations of ANZFTA, which is the ASEAN Australia New Zealand Free Trade Agreement. And that was launched in 2010 and upgraded in 2023. And it's boosted trade to 900 billion pesos per year. So we're really proud of that. And we were also active in RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is, also ASEAN-led. So we're really pleased this year, it's a big year, that negotiations are in the works regarding a comprehensive strategic partnership with ASEAN, which will reflect that New Zealand has a unique relationship of special character.
Yeah, and here in the Philippines, New Zealand, we're not that much aware of New Zealand. So now I think it's really a special country, looking at what you just discussed with us. So now let's look at the Filipinos in New Zealand. I understand there are over 100,000 Filipinos in New Zealand. So are they the third largest Asian ethnic group? And what do they contribute to the New Zealand economy?
Yeah, well, here in Manila, or when I travel around, I'm constantly meeting people who say, oh, I have a sister in Auckland, or I have a cousin in Christchurch. And I wonder, do you have any friends or relatives in New Zealand?
No, but I have a friend there, and I've been to your country like 100 years ago.
Oh, very good. But yes, indeed. I mean, Filipinos are the fastest growing ethnicity in New Zealand. So back in 2001, there were 10,000 Filipinos. And now there are over 100,000 Filipinos who call New Zealand home. And this means actually that Tagalog is one of the fastest growing languages in New Zealand. And we see Filipinos making their mark in all sorts of sectors of our economy. They're so critical to our success, whether it be in the dairy farms that I mentioned, or construction, or healthcare. And we even have 2 Filipino members of parliament. So Filipinos are making an outstanding contribution to our economy and society. And, you know, New Zealanders love Filipinos. They're so friendly and hardworking and resilient and warm.
And how's tourism between our two countries? Is there a direct flight from Manila to Wellington? None. Okay.
Anyway, it used to be.
How can we improve tourism between our two countries? Because New Zealand is so beautiful. After watching the movies set there.
Oh, yes, like Lord of the Rings. Everyone's talking to me about Lord of the Rings. Yeah, and actually many Filipinos tell me how they love visiting Queenstown, or that New Zealand is their dream destination to visit. And actually the statistics attest to this, because over 30,000 Filipinos visited New Zealand last year, which exceeds the pre-pandemic numbers. So we know that tourism in both countries is growing, which is fantastic. But then imagine if direct flights are restored, how much more the numbers would grow. And it would allow for business exchange, students to travel more, more people exchange and tourism. So that would be fantastic. And I know, Filipinos love New Zealand, but also Kiwis love coming to the Philippines because of the experience. So I don't think it's hard to promote the Philippines to New Zealanders because of the experience. And I can personally attest to this because last year I accompanied Tourism Secretary Frasco to Anilao.
Okay.
And it was a diving experience. So I had the opportunity to do my first ever dive here in the Philippines. And I posted on social media, and I hope more New Zealanders will come to experience the incredible marine biodiversity here in the Philippines.
Yeah, so the beaches are great to come on.
Absolutely. New Zealanders love the beaches here.
So let's wait. We won't wait for the direct flights anymore, Ambassador. We'll pass through.
Yeah, there are other routes.
Yes.
Make the most of it.
So maybe the final question, because we've heard now about the growing number of Filipino students, as you mentioned earlier, who are going to study in New Zealand under a scholarship program of your government. Can you talk to us about this scholarship program? And also, I'm sure our viewers would be very interested.
Yeah, well, people are at the heart of our development program, and we love investing in people through education. New Zealand universities rank in the top 3% globally. All of them are in that ranking. And so we offer out what's called a Manaki New Zealand scholarship for students or faculty members who want to pursue postgraduate study in New Zealand and also make lifelong connections and friends. And in fact, applications are open right now until the end of February. But we like to focus. We have quite a heart actually for underrepresented groups in the Philippines and Indigenous people. So last month, I had the privilege to travel to Mindanao and to visit a number of the universities there and promote interest in these scholarships. And I was joined by some of our alumni. And it was so inspiring to hear about their New Zealand experience, what they learned, and the fact that they were so passionate about coming back to the Philippines, putting that into practice, and giving back to their communities.
What fields do you promote to study in New Zealand for the postgraduate
Yeah.
students?
Yes, there are some focal areas,
Yes.
and these include, can be environmental, which could include things like water engineering, there's gender studies, also peace studies, and agriculture. So some really great topics. And we also offer short-term training opportunities in some focused areas like renewable energy, geothermal, food safety, and public sector leadership. And one participant in our short-term training really stood out to me. I found incredibly inspiring. His name is Junmirth, and he visited me in the New Zealand embassy to share his experience. And Junmirth is a public school teacher from Bukidnon.
Wow.
And he shared with me all the challenges, having to cross multiple rivers just to get to school.
Yes.
The students not turning up because they were hungry, various challenges. But he took such initiative, and he got his community on board and other partners to introduce a feeding program and to overcome these various obstacles. And actually, when he was sharing his story, I was so moved that, I had tears coming to my eyes. And I know and I can understand why he has been named as a finalist in the 2025 Global Teachers Prize. So it is such a privilege for New Zealand to invest in Filipino leaders like this.
Thank you for that story, Ambassador. And maybe before we end this interview, I know that you speak Filipino to some extent, so maybe you can talk to our viewers. You can face the camera and give a message to our viewers and listeners.
Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Isang malaking karangalan na maging ambassador ng New Zealand dito sa Pilipinas. Maraming salamat po sa mainit ninyong pagtanggap sa akin. Kahanga-hanga ang inyong makulay na kultura at masasarap na pagkain. Ang New Zealand at ang Pilipinas, magkalayo man sa mapa, magkalapit naman sa puso. Patuloy natin palalimin ang ating pagkakaibigan at pagtutulungan. Kayo mismo ang puso ng ugnayan nito. Naway patuloy ang matibay nating pag-uugnayan. Hangad ko na mas marami pang pagkakataon na magkasama kayo tungo sa pag-unlad. Maraming salamat po. Ingat kayo lagi at kita-kits muli.
Thank you. That was wonderful. So, thank you so much, Ambassador, and to our viewers and listeners. That's it for today's show. But before we let you go, we invite you to download the Rappler Communities app. There you'll find all our stories, and you can chat with us about everything we talked about with Ambassador McIntosh, including her Filipino final message. Just join the Global Affairs channel there in the app. Thank you to our viewers. This has been Worldview with Marites Vitug. Till next time.